Happy Tuesday and welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. There's a great event tonight with former NFL star Vance Johnson. Win Again Academy, check out Mark Moyer's events. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. We're on a little break while I was away at a couple events, but we're back with some Wolff Den action this week, and happy to have Abe Finkelstein into the Wolff Den. Welcome. How's everything going?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being here. Everything is going pretty good. I don't really have any major complaints. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm tired, but no complaints. Just keep going and going. My grandma used to say, "No one cares about your complaints anyway," or something like that. I don't remember.
Words to that effect.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. I think we need to dig into this tired thing. I think that might be fodder for discussion.
Well, I was away for 10 days at two different events, a trade show, and then in Vegas, and then I took the red eye home. So it should be I should be fine. Maybe
3 days.
So you get a good night's event. Speaking of, I met Christopher in New York City. We had talked and networked, and at Mark Moyer's event of the Win Again Academy, and then I got to meet him in person. It was great to meet like 6 or 7 people that I'd been talking to for years, and we'll talk about LinkedIn because you guys are doing a lot on LinkedIn, but talking to people on LinkedIn and then finally get to meet them. It was great, but we got you here for the people in the audience who might not know who you are. Give a brief intro and then we'll get into it.
Well, thank you again for having me. My name's Abe Finkelstein, and I am the founder and CEO, president of StaffLink Outsourcing. StaffLink's a professional employer organization, been around since about 1997, and initially I was a lawyer by trade, an accountant first, then a lawyer, and found myself in this crazy industry called the professional employer industry, and about almost 30 years later, here I am.
Yeah, and I met you through Heather, who's on your team, and we were just talking. I met Heather at a concert through a friend. It's crazy how people, you just meet people. You just never know who you're going to meet when you're at an event, or just you could be out grocery shopping. I think the interesting thing too about the business that you do, and we'll talk more about, is finding a job is a lot of networking, right? And so it's great if you know someone who knows someone who hears about a job, and that's great. But to have a company and people who can help you, there's never doing too much with trying to find a job. Is that correct?
Well, listen, the best hires I've ever made are the hires that came to me through a source, and it wasn't just a resume that got sent to me. What a PEO does is we assist our clients on everything related to HR. So they actually do the hiring. We help back up that process by giving them the tools, the personality profiles, all of the, we'll guide them through the hiring process, but they actually do the hiring. Once those employees are hired on, we manage everything to do with the entire team of employees for that client company.
Okay. How did you get into this? It's a weird thing to get into, as you probably thought yourself, 30 years later. How did you get into it?
It's exactly as you described a moment ago, where paths just cross and completely random events end up having these massive impact on your life. So, one of the things that you may or may not know about me is I'm a airplane geek. I love everything to do with aviation, and it's been a big part of my life. Pretty much as long as I can remember. Well, I was practicing law at a small law firm in Boca Raton, and became friendly with another person who shared, he had an executive suite across from our law firm. And he and I started talking. He was an airplane geek. I was an airplane geek. The difference is he was an airplane geek with money. So we used to go flying around in his airplane. At some point, we'd become pretty good friends, and he told me he was thinking about starting this business. I was actually looking. I wasn't thrilled with the law firm that I was practicing, with which I was practicing. So I was looking for other opportunities. And he said, with your background, between accounting and law, you'd be a pretty good operations guy. for this company that we're starting. So I said, okay, well, what is it? And he said, well, it's an employee leasing company. And, he started talking to me about federal unemployment tax and FICA and Medicare and workers' compensation and all these other things. And, my head's spinning. I had no idea what any of that stuff meant. And
Amorous, right?
yeah, so I looked into the industry. I found out first, my first thought was this can't be legal. So, he's like, yeah, we're going to put these employees on our payroll and we're going to lease them back to the client company. And I'm like, okay, that just can't be legit. But not only did I did a little bit of research, found out it was legit and actually a viable business that's regulated by the state and all that other stuff. So I threw in, we started a company called Excel Administrative Solutions for about 3 years. And at that point, I decided to go my separate way, and I started StaffLink in 1997. And here I am.
Yeah, well, you got a plane sitting behind you up. I don't know if it's in plain sight, pun intended. You have a license?
I do. Yeah, I have my private pilot, my instrument rating. I'm a commercial rated pilot. I'm actually an airline transport pilot, so that's about the highest rating you can get.
Yeah, that's we have a friend, Aston, who I hope to have on the shows. Of the many interesting things he has is he flies some planes, and my friend Rusty in Gainesville, where Heather is, who that's how we met. He flies to away football games, and it's just
cool.
like a 2-seater, 3-seater. It's I would be terrified, but I probably would do it. Yeah, it's a fun thing. Do we call it a geek instead of a nerd? Which one of them? Like the it's interesting the way people use words, because isn't it the geek squad is like that's the cool thing. Like you call the geek squad, but you call someone a nerd. I don't know, just something that popped in my head as you called yourself an airplane geek.
My night job is I fly professionally as well.
Okay, so you do professional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is, I mean, you started flying after you started StaffLink or started your whole staffing, correct?
No, I actually started flying in college. So I got my private pilot's license in college, and then over the years, just kind of bought and sold airplanes and built a whole bunch of time, and eventually found myself at the point where I could, people would actually pay me to go fly airplanes for them. So here I am.
And so why start something else if you're flying planes? Is that not a career? Is that not good enough to fill the time and the money that you need? Or
yeah, I love it. I mean, it's really great. I love the travel. I love working as a crew. The whole thing is really terrific, and it keeps my brain active. But on top of that, the professional pilot stuff started way after StaffLink was started. So it's just something I do because I love doing it.
Interesting about the being a pilot. Like, how much do you actually have to be on your game as you're flying, as opposed to if something happens, right? If everything's normal, is it just sitting there and monitoring? What's that like? You kind of envision that when you're flying, like they're not up there like doing this all the whole flight, right?
Yeah, very much. I mean, the most active thing that's going on pretty much constantly through any flight is your communication with air traffic control. You're constantly, talking and sort of getting switched to different frequencies and that sort of thing. But you're right. It's very much monitoring all your systems, making sure everything's working the way it's supposed to work, planning out the next segment of the trip, all that good stuff.
You got some fans here going in. I know they're for you because I don't they're not familiar. Some of them are. And then we have a user whose name is not identified. I'm going to assume that's Heather, but it might not be. What skills are like transferable in the pilots and the I mean, starting a company, right? I mean, that's what you did. You weren't an HR person. You kind of started the HR-ish and employment company without really being an employment or HR specialists, which is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You find the specialists and the experts to do it. But what's the similarities? What has helped you from one to the other?
I would guess that, discipline, attention to detail, following checklists. I think very much in that way, and I think I run my business pretty much the same way. So process is really important, and in order to understand process, you have to understand all your systems, and that's really been helpful to me as I've learned how to be in business. It's become that much more important to me. One other incredibly important transferable skill is communication within a team, because when you're a flight crew, you're a team, and there is a very specific way you interact with each other. Everyone has a job, and you got to know your job, and you also have to be able to communicate exactly what you're doing with the other person. They have to be in the loop at all times, and that's very, very similar when you're running a company with multiple departments. It's important for that level of communication to happen. So those are probably the most transferable skills that I can think of. One thing you said that really just brought a memory to light is, I had no idea what I was doing when I started this company.
Yeah,
And I
join
have,
the club.
yeah, right, exactly, right. It's kind of fake it till you make it. And I have a saying that's framed in my office that sometimes you just have to take the leap and build your wings on the way down.
Yeah, that's a great quote. And based on that, the other thing that you need is trust. Trust in your team, the people that you bring on, especially in a pilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone is not in sync, I mean, the bad things can happen, and
Yep.
that's the same with the company. You mentioned internal. I just had a conversation with someone about the internal communication and how so many companies fail at that. They're so worried about the external communication that they don't focus on the internal communication. I think that's every bit as important to
Yeah.
have the internal communication good, and that's for, I think it's really to have things run smoothly, but also to have people trust that they're being treated well, they're being treated fair, and it's all part of the culture. Again, in the culture, people are worried about, do we have ping pong tables in the playroom and some free snacks? It's great,
Mm-hmm.
but the other stuff is like, when I want to know what the culture is, there's a lot of other things that I want to know about other than that, and that's your world.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've become a true believer in the whole concept of corporate culture and how important that is, and to the point where, if we see a really qualified candidate for a position, but we don't think they'd be a cultural fit, we'll pass on that hire. And even if it's, even in a really, really challenging hiring environment, which we have right now, we have passed on people because they just didn't, share the values, the core values of the company. One of the things that's always been my mantra is, we're a client service business. Uh, Everything we do has to be focused on making a client happy, because if we're not making the client happy, we have no reason to be here.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what department you're working in. It doesn't matter whether you're running payroll, whether you're on the benefits team, whether you're a part of risk. At the end of the day, our job, the reason we're employed, is to make our clients happy.
But there's a crazy thing that's going on with customer service, and that's what it is. Customer service is
Mm-hmm.
keeping your client, customer, whatever, happy. And we talk about do you want a good doctor or someone with good bedside manner? And you're like, well, I want both.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, but the customer service and the way people are servicing and communicating with others is with a kindness and like trying to be so nice, but it's like it's not. I want you to help me. If you can't help me, I want you to tell me you can't help me and find someone who can help me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to have you hear me. Oh, I'm so sorry. This happened to you. All that. stuff
Right.
that's like common when you're hearing people. I'm like, that's scripted. That's a customer service representative. And I end up like, sometimes I get angry with them. I say, look, I know it's not your fault because there's nothing you can do, but somebody has to hear that, hey, I just want you to get something done. And the companies that get stuff done and keep people happy is it. And not doing something to make something happy because you need to make them happy, because you can't make everyone happy, right? And
Right.
then don't promise something that you can. So it's like, look, this happened. It's out of our control. Yeah, some of it was probably our fault. Some of it was your fault. Let's figure out how we can do it better next time. Hopefully you get that opportunity again.
You know, you raise a really great point, and that's when you're talking to people that, and I tend to see this in larger bureaucratic organizations, you know, government, large companies, that kind of thing. The people that you're talking to have absolutely no ability to go beyond their script.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've always tried to do in StaffLink is to empower my team to make decisions that make clients happy. And, you know, obviously there are limits to that, but for the most part, that sort of differentiates who we are versus a larger, more bureaucratic, you know, organization where you're never going to get to a person who can make a decision.
Yeah.
And or that wants to make a decision, you know? So that's important to me. And it's something that we wrestle with, because as you get older, obviously that becomes more and more, I mean, older, as you get larger, that becomes more and more difficult to achieve. But it really is about trust. You know, going back to your comment earlier about trust and empowering people.
Yeah, trust that they can make the right decisions, and then leniency in the fact that their whole job's not dependent if they do make a decision, and it's not a home run, or it's a bad. That's the other thing. People are worried
Yeah.
about, like, they don't, like you said, they don't want to make a decision because it might not be the right one. And you know, it's a tough thing to find the right people to do that. But
Yeah.
that's so important in the business world when you're in the customer service. That's all we're all in the customer service business. I mean, we have great products, right? But if our service is no good, people aren't going to want to order from it. The majority, they're not going to want to come back. They'll try and find someone. I mean, our stuff is kind of unique, but they'll try and find someone who they just enjoy working with better. And that's like the relationship thing. You mentioned the PEO. What is that? And how does that differ from an HR company? How does that differ from a staffing company, a recruiter? I mean, there's so many different levels. So,
Right.
Explain that to people.
They are all different types of business process outsourcing or human resources outsourcing. What differentiates a PEO, which is a professional employer organization, is that there's this legal concept called co-employment. And the professional employer organization becomes co-employers of the worksite employees. So there's a contract between the client company and the PEO. Then the PEO, by contract, assumes responsibility for the administration of all of the client company employees. There's a separate employment relationship.
Is it all of their employees, or they have some employees that are their employees and some that come through you?
By and large, it's all the employees. There are always exceptions. Sometimes owners exclude themselves from payroll. If there are, for example, you mentioned a staffing company. If there are staffing company employees, they would be excluded. But we try very hard to avoid split workforces where some employees are PEO employees and others are not, unless there's a totally separate location. And we have had that situation where one location is co-employed or PEO client and the other location is not. There are lots of really good risk management reasons to not allow split workforces. But so anyway, by doing that, we become responsible for the administration of payroll, which means actually, getting the payroll out, all of the tax compliance related to the payroll. They're covered under our workers' compensation insurance policy. If they elect benefits, they can elect those benefits under our master policy arrangement, our health benefits, dental benefits. So we have a really Fortune 500 style benefits package that now a small client, 10, 20 employees can access a not virtual, a Fortune 500 benefits package. They have access to our retirement plan. And we do the human resources support. We do risk management support. Whereas a staffing company, an employee, a client may have 2 or 3 positions that they need filled on a part-time or maybe temp, a permanent basis, and they will ask that staffing company to place employees with them for that specific function. And then recruiters just go out and find employees and for a client company to hire. So we are sort of an all-encompassed, let us manage the human resources. You go do what you do best and that makes money for your company. Let me do the stuff that doesn't make you money.
Yeah, you keep saying risk management. It reminds me of, I'm a big Seinfeld fan. When George, did you ever see, are you a Seinfeld fan?
I was a Seinfeld fan.
Yeah, so George had to do a presentation on risk management, and he hired the mentor, and it got mixed up, and he's had the Ovaltine. Anyway, it's a great Seinfeld episode. So the people who are working, they feel there's no reason to feel like they're not part of the company that they're working for, separate than like a contract worker.
Correct. And another really good point. When you're the client company is still the common law employer. And as far as the employee knows, for the most part, we're just an administrative employer. We don't make the hiring decisions. We don't make the firing decisions. We don't determine whether or not what their wages are going to be or what hours they're going to work. Those decisions are still made by the client company. We become the administrators of those decisions, and we assist in helping them with documentation, HR guidance, those sorts of things.
Yeah, HR is people don't like HR. I guess I would say that, right? Because the only time you interact with them is if something bad happens. They're there to sort of police and make sure that everyone's being treated fairly.
Yeah.
Is it hard to find people who want to get in the HR business?
Actually, not really. I think that 100% HR. I think it's with the newer generation, it's becoming more and more accepted as just a normal part of business, where it's not necessarily as associated with negativity as it was. And 20 years ago, that was certainly the case. Interestingly enough, you asked me about employees and their perception of co-employment. 25 years ago, that was a big part of rolling out a new client was, hey, I want you guys to understand we're not here to undermine you. We're not, we're not a negative thing, we're a positive thing, and here's the reason why. But it's interesting because as the industry has gained more and more of a foothold, that becomes less and less of an issue. I see the same trend happening with human resources, where people are understanding that HR is a little bit more of an all-encompassing, comprehensive thing that is really there to try and help facilitate the relationship between the client or between the employees and the employer.
Is there a size that's in your wheelhouse that you guys specialize in?
We tend to focus on companies between 10 and about 200 employees. We do have some that are a little bit smaller than that, 5 to 10. Lately, it's really been an interesting trend. If you asked me 10 years ago, I would have told you that the average client size was about 9 or 10 employees in just PEO industry wide, not just StaffLink wide. But what we're seeing is the trend is larger and larger clients are turning to PEOs because it's just, even for large clients, it's more efficient than bringing in your own HR department.
Yeah. What has the Me Too, DEI social justice environment. How has that affected you? And I'll tell you why I bring this up. I have a friend got fired from his job for he asked a coworker to go to a wedding with him. Very nothing. They're friends. And she got fired, and then she said something about this, and he got fired. I worked for a company that wouldn't fire anyone because they were afraid that they would get sued, and so there's advantages to that, but then there's like, hey, I know you're not going to fire me because you can't. You have to go through these hoops. Mm-hmm. So there's like there's good things. We want people to be fair and be treated fair and as human beings and make it a great working environment, but also you want to have an environment that is not, I don't know. I don't.
Toxic?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So the labor and employment laws have been around for quite a while. And certainly in the early years of the industry, you would see a fair amount of litigation, against the employers. But since this hypersensitivity to political correctness, which I would probably goes back to 2016, 2017, thereabout, and then through COVID and post-COVID, we've seen a steady escalation in the amount of toxicity and the amount of litigation around labor and employment issues. So there is, without question, a heightened sensitivity to it. And people are suing, whether you fire them or don't fire them, they are suing their employers. And what you're seeing is one of the other things that we provide for our client companies is employer practices liability insurance. And because of that, we, try to get in before there's an issue and help, to mitigate any potential exposure. But once there is an issue, we manage those claims, the litigation. And we are seeing a large increase in frequency industry-wide. And we're seeing a large increase in the severity of those claims, meaning it's costing more and more to get rid of them. So the result is the cost of the insurance is skyrocketing.
Yeah. So,
it's a very real issue. Not because necessarily the employers have really changed the way they're doing business, or the cultures of the companies have not necessarily changed, but the sensitivity to the employees has absolutely changed.
If you were working with every single corporation in America, from what you can tell, and the conversations you have and the people you meet, what percentage are, it's pretty good, we wouldn't have to do much. How many are these people need so much work? Like, where are the majority of these companies lie? Closer to we're doing things pretty good, or closer to, man, there needs to be some changes and overhaul?
So I'll tell you, every first appointment I've ever had with a prospective client, they tell me what a great job they do and what a great culture they have.
Of course.
So I think that would really kind of depend on the size of the prospective client, and also the attitude of senior management. In fact, I would tell you that the number one indicator for me of whether or not I want to do business with a client company is the attitude of management. If they have an attitude that their employees are important and valuable, and that the reason that they are successful is because they have a team of people that help them become successful, that's somebody I want to do business with. If, on the other hand, they have the opposite attitude, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be an absolute basket case, and there's no fixing that, because you've got this, you obviously have people who want to do well, just don't know any better. And those are great people for us to do business with, because we can give them that guidance. We can help them. We can put things in place. They have tools that they wouldn't otherwise have available. For somebody who doesn't know, doesn't want to know, doesn't care, I can't fix that. And then for the companies that a lot of the businesses that we have as clients are companies that already have pretty good protocols in place, but know they can do it better and just want us to take care of the things that aren't really productive for them. Does that answer the question, or did I completely dodge it?
No, I think you did a good job of answering. What did you hear about what happened at with Shopify? But a
Mm-mm.
lot of companies, major layoffs. They had I guess their stock was not doing well, and so they laid off a ton of people. No, they didn't lay off people. They rescinded job offers
Mm-hmm.
that were there, and also rescinded internships, which some kids needed to finish and complete their college credits. Does that what do you think when you see all these layoffs because of the stock price and shareholders and my feeling is all the layoffs even during the COVID is like, man, you're really flipping the coin on what's going to happen when you start to hire people. Are people going to have a bad feeling about your company when they do that? Are you going to be able to hire someone who's as good as who was already there? And even if they're as good, there's a ramp up period to get it. It's a 50-50 shot whether someone's going to be as good or better, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, the answer to your question about how I feel about that is, I find it a little bit short-sighted, and probably the short-sightedness happened when all that hiring occurred, where they overhired and didn't really take into account the possibility that they just had more than they needed and might not be able to sustain it if there was any kind of negative development. I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the next 6 months to year as the economy is slowing down. It's pretty. We're seeing a pretty significant slowdown. There was a lot of hiring that occurred. You had wage inflation that was pretty extraordinary over the last year. So a lot of those people that got hired in the last year, I think, are going to be pretty vulnerable. It would not shock me at all if people end up letting go some of the newer hires for two reasons. And I actually witnessed some of this myself. People that held themselves out for jobs that they honestly were not really qualified for, but the opportunities were there. So they got very large pay increases and took on jobs that they weren't ready for. And then, the other is, people who are working the job that they're qualified for, but just are getting paid way more than will be available in the next 6 months to year.
As HR, do you have any discussions or advice, or do you talk with companies as they're trying to make these decisions, or that doesn't have, you guys don't have anything to do with that?
Yeah, some companies will get ahead of it and have those discussions with us. Other companies just kind of run their companies, and if there's an issue, they'll bring us in. You know, for most small businesses, I don't know that that's going to be a huge issue. It's really going to be for the larger companies when the WARN Act and things like that become triggered. That you have federal requirements. If you're going to do mass layoffs, you've got to be ahead of it, and you've got to follow the protocols and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I have a friend who just said her husband got laid off. Worked there 3 years, zero compensation for him. 3 years, get nothing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, maybe like 2 months of health insurance. It's just crazy. The loyalty, there is none, right? I mean, there's no loyalty. So it's like it's a bad thing to have, because when I'm there, I'm thinking, look, if they can let me go tomorrow, I always got to be thinking about for me. Which people are going to think for themselves anyway. Put yourself first and make sure you and your family are. But how do we fix that? I mean, should there be? And then you see a CEO with a parachute, right? And it's nuts. It's nuts that the people who are working the hardest and just walk away with nothing.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm a dyed-in-the-wool capitalist, so forgive me. But I also see the other side where you have employees that say, you know what, I'm out because somebody's going to pay me more money to. So, and I've had to deal with that as a business owner.
Yeah.
So loyalty is a two-way street. And I think it comes down to culture again. If you're going to a job and all you're looking at is the salary, right? You're not looking at the total cost of the benefits and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And you're not looking into the history of that company and what have they done when the economy turns? What have they done in the past?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be real sympathetic to you.
I get that.
But on the other hand, I've been very fortunate that I've really not had to deal with such a tremendous turn in finances that I've ever had to contemplate layoffs. So I've done them, but I have cut back on spending because I feel like I have a bigger obligation. So if my obligation is to the, let's call it 150 employees that retain their jobs, I feel terrible about the 20 that didn't, but the 120, I wanted to save the company for the 120.
Right. No, that makes sense. My father was an executive recruiter in the accounting space when there was the big six back, and then it became the big four, and I don't even know what it is now.
I have no idea. I lost track.
But he would come to me and say, "Yeah, this guy took a job, great," and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." We celebrate. He's like, "No, not until he starts and he's working, and they send us the check because I just had this guy told me that he left and a company came back and was like they overpaid for him to come back because this what this company took."
Mm-hmm.
The people who are good, you want to keep them, and you got to figure out a way to keep them. So I look, I understand both sides. I'm saying I think there's certain ways that it can be done, and sometimes not always just a bottom. I know we're in business to make money, right? That's why we're in business, but it's got to be more than just a bottom line dollar stock price shareholders. There's got to be a better way for a lot of these companies to do it. Here's a long, again, can't see the name because it's not showing up here. Might be Heather. Yeah. So it's hard to watch both sides of it. Yeah. I agree. For the most part, business owners, especially smaller companies, the ones that you deal with, want to do the best for their employees,
right.
And even for the people that leave. And then as you get bigger, it's just, again, it's out of their hands. So people have jobs that are supposed to do this, but they can't.
Right. That's exactly right. You actually read my mind. That's exactly what I was thinking. It tends to be the larger companies where that becomes an issue because they tend to be more focused on quarterly revenue, quarterly earnings. When you have professional managers making decisions that are geared toward the bottom line, that's when those types of decisions tend to be made. Whereas in smaller businesses, and I guess I'm speaking in generalities, but in smaller businesses, I just don't see that as much. And I really just think it comes down to the culture of the business. How do they run? How do they run their business? How do they treat their team? How do they treat their clients? I think all of it's related.
How many clients do you guys have right now?
A little over 300.
And how much can you grow without changing who you are?
That is a great question. I hope I never change how we operate. I think
even bringing on more people, like saying, hey, if we got 50 more or 20 more, 10 more, we'd have to hire a bunch of more people.
And we do. We are constantly looking for talent to bring in to help support our clients. I think that we can easily get to 10,000 worksite employees. Right now we're at 4,000. So you're looking at probably 600 clients or so, and still maintain this level of touch with our clients. And again, I'm hoping that we can always maintain that level. My goal, was never to become the biggest PEO out there. I just wanted to be the best, most profitable one.
Yeah, that's a very good goal. Bigger is not always better. So, I mean, it just also depends on, and there's so much funny math out there. Like you can spin the way you want. Like someone was asking me what my sales were, and I'm like, well, it's kind of a tricky question because I could have a customer that they buy a ton of stuff, but the margin for me in what we make was low, or we can have a smaller one and the margin is twice as much. So people use this funny math, and that's crazy. So who knows what to believe.
And I probably should add that, at the beginning of the year, StaffLink merged with a company out of New York called Prestige PEO. So StaffLink Outsourcing is a Prestige PEO company. Now, Prestige has 20,000 worksite employees, but their model is very, very similar to ours, where they're very high touch, very close relationship with clients, tend to go after clients that have very, very similar business models. So, if they can still do it at 20,000, then I see no reason why we couldn't get to 10,000 and still keep that level of content.
I want to share what we did for you guys. There was a really cool thing that you guys gave to your customers who went to the when you were in Vegas. You took them to the Golden Knights, and just a really nice touch to send to someone, just as an appreciation. And the card, great, but also taking them out to a game and having sort of a fun experience. You don't always associate that with HR and that type of stuff. So how do you guys just keep enhancing the experience with your customers and potential customers? What are things that you guys are doing?
Well, first of all, you did great work on that. I loved it. It was, and of course, that was Heather's idea. So that was sort of being able to marry two of my passions, my aviation and the human resources side. And one of our vertical markets is the aviation space. So that was a great opportunity for us to, get some clients, get some vendors, and everybody just get together and have a great time. And it was a really terrific event. It came off really well. So I love doing informal things like that. Every year we have something called SalesLink, which is where we get most of our sales are done through external channels like insurance agents, insurance brokers, financial planners, those types of things. So we take our top producing referring brokers and we come up with a cool place to be. And we sit around a table and we talk about trends that they're seeing, trends that we're seeing. And we try to commingle that with some really fun events. And that has been a really, really neat sort of niche thing that only we do. We were going to include some clients in that. We haven't done that yet. And honestly, other than getting out and getting in front of clients, that's really how we try to keep that relationship. We haven't done any big parties or anything like that. We've done small informal things, and obviously I try to get out and visit with our clients as frequently as possible. But just touching base with them and letting them know that, hey, we're here. They still have my cell phone. They can still call me, and they often do on Sundays and midnight and stuff like that. to me, just letting them know we're here, and if there's a problem, they can reach us. That's probably the most important thing to them.
Yeah, being accessible and having answers, like not giving them the lip service, and that's really important thing, especially with this. I mean, you're not a small company, but you're not a big company.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to know that you're available, and someone like Heather, the top people in the company are out in the field getting their hands dirty. That's you look at the companies like that, and the same way you look at certain companies, you want to work with, and people that you can trust, that when you're partnering with them and working with them, that they're going to have your best interest, and the good types of companies to be around. So we talk about some good stuff. What's something in the industry that you frown upon, that you think is being done poorly, that should be improved?
It's almost as if yeah, we keep seeing it over and over and over again in this industry. As soon as the market becomes difficult, then you start seeing pricing, a race to the bottom on pricing.
Yeah.
And early on in my career, that was all workers' compensation insurance driven, and that kind of resolved itself because people were selling their workers' compensation insurance for less than it was actually costing them. Well, those companies ended up going out of business.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, lots of client companies, got hit. And they're back out on the market looking for workers' compensation and looking at sticker shock, and so that happens over and over and over again. And it's you see it with the fees that some competitors charge are far below what it actually costs to perform the service.
Yeah.
But you also see it with health insurance, where they're underselling health insurance, and that ends up leading to larger increases. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to continue to grow when there's always going to be someone out there who's just trying to grow the top line and isn't really looking at profitability. So that is, the biggest challenge that I see from the industry. The other challenges tend to be external, and those challenges are the constantly changing landscape for small businesses, labor and employment laws. I mean, the COVID sets of laws, when they came out, were a blessing and a curse for the industry, because but for PEOs, there were a whole bunch of companies that would never have gotten their PPP loans. And
Right.
like overnight, we had to become experts on, the PPP and the different types of leave and then our systems had to be adapted to be able to accommodate all that stuff. So that's an opportunity, but it's also a threat.
Yeah. But if you can take advantage of the opportunity, then you have a step up. You get more visibility, like the breweries that were producing water when everyone needed water, opportunity to help others and help you, but help others first and foremost.
Oh, I was incredibly proud of, first of all, my team, and second of all, my industry, because we really stepped it up for that period of time. And I just, I think my industry and team just did a tremendous job.
That's good. That's great to hear. You talked a little bit about the growth mind. When you started StaffLink, and you think about where you are today, how far or how close are you to where you envisioned it?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm not even sure I had a clear vision of where I would be 5 years out, much less 23. I never started StaffLink with the concept of, growing it and selling it. Or to me, it was just, this is a business I'm just going to run forever. And that was up until about January 1st of this year. That was sort of where I was. So to me, my metrics were, I always wanted to get to 5,000 worksite employees and then just hold and see kind of how things would run. But my metrics were always about profitability and the ability to service the client. So I never really thought in terms of, well, I need to be at this number by this date.
And not necessarily a number, just maybe even over the whole overall picture. Like, this is what I envision it being, even in the service and the type of offerings that we do. Is it kind of just, this is what it'll be and we'll expand by volume, or is it there's other things that we want to offer and become as a company?
It's evolved every single year. This industry evolves into something else. When I first got into it, the big driver for companies that wanted to come to PEOs was workers' compensation insurance. And then for a bunch of years, workers' compensation insurance got really, really tough. And that, so companies didn't have an option outside of a PEO because there just weren't people writing. Then it became, more health insurance driven. What's been really interesting over the last probably 5 or 6 years is that human resources information technology is now a huge part of what we bring to the table and of every single deal.
Right.
So people want to see what technology we can offer and how it's going to help them, how it's going to make their lives easier. So no, by no means are we standing still. We are constantly trying to figure out what the cutting edge of the industry is going to be and then get there, or push our vendors to help us get there,
Trying new things, getting new stuff. What's your batting average on that side? I mean, have you done fairly well? I mean, obviously everyone has some misses, things we did bad.
I don't call them misses or failures. I call them
experiences.
I've definitely had decisions I've made that 3 or 4 years later didn't work out the way I hoped they would. However, I know that I made the decision I made at the time for good reasons.
Yeah.
They carried me to where I am today. So I don't look back at it and go, man, I really botched that one. I wish I could redo that decision, because I probably would have made the same decision.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. Sometimes you'd go back and be like, I'd make the same decision because that's what it should have been, and maybe it should have been more successful than it actually was. Exactly. Maybe it was the time. Who knows what that reasoning could have been. I think taking chances is such a key thing to starting a business and growth, and not being afraid to take that risk. We pull it back to the people who aren't making decisions because they either don't have the authority to do so, or they're worried about the consequence of it. It's one of the things I love about having my own company is I make all the decisions, and I'm going to live and die by them, and I'm going to learn from some, and I'm going to, it's a hit or miss, but hopefully you hit more than you miss, right? In baseball, if you hit 300, you're a Hall of Famer. So you can't hit 300 as a company owner, but you hope that you make educated guesses and get the right people around you. My wife is actually an attorney. She went to undergrad at UM. I know you went to grad. That's where you got your law degree, right?
Right.
You didn't practice law. Would you be a lawyer if you weren't? Because you've been in this business your whole career. What would you do? What would you do if you would go back?
So I did practice law for about a year, and I would say I don't think I'd go back to practicing law now.
It could have been that you were at just a bad company, right? If you had a better experience, you might still be doing law today.
Yeah, I was not real happy with the firm that I had connected with. Nice people, good attorneys. It just wasn't a good fit. And, I never, ever considered myself to be an entrepreneur. I never considered myself to be a risk taker, quite frankly. So, but over the last, 28 years, I guess I've sort of developed that entrepreneurial spirit, because if I were to, stop running StaffLink Outsourcing tomorrow, I'm going to go start something else. And I got a couple of ideas, that I might start anyway. So, I've really enjoyed building a business. I've really enjoyed the experience. It's been great. It's been terrific. I'm a huge believer that small business is what makes this world go round. It drives this economy, and you know, I don't know. I just don't think there's any better place to be.
Yeah, it's and the people that come in to your life from that, in the
Yeah.
small, when you can interact with them, you're not a CEO who no one sees and gets it. It's hard to get a hold of, which is, we've had those people, and you have conversations. It's just, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel genuine when you have that.
Yep.
They don't look at you as, and not that you should look at these people as your equal in the company, because there's a hierarchy, but sort of equal as a person. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the bigger the company, the harder it is to get that feeling from even just management. Forget about the higher up, just being an employee in there.
Yeah, I would really hope that people um, feel that I hold them in that stature. I God, I know I have my moods, but I would hope that comes off, that I really do care about the people.
I think people can tell, and that doesn't mean they won't be nice or kiss up to certain people, because that's just what they have to do. But at the end of the day, they walk away from the conversation, and I think that they know, which is, it's a good feeling when you can do that, and it's a bad feeling when you're around someone who's not like that. And we've all been in those meetings and in those conversations.
Yep.
Who knows where would you fly? Where's a place you haven't flown that you would love to fly to?
Oh wow. Um, you know, one of these days I'm going to do the flight into Aspen. I still haven't done that. I would love to go to, just go to. Actually, I want to take the plane to Europe at some point. A buddy of mine is actually doing that right now,
Okay.
and yeah, he's you go up through Canada, and then you shoot over to Greenland and then Iceland, and he's going to end up in Sweden eventually. He is from Sweden. So I would love to do that and just do a trip to Europe at some point.
You own a plane or you just rent?
I do. I own a plane. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of hangars here. That's what they call them, right? Hangars here in South Florida.
Yep.
What's your favorite part of South Florida? Like, the thing about being in South Florida, is there an event or a restaurant or an activity that you do that you love being in South Florida for?
There's something really cool about being able to be out on a boat in February.
Yeah.
And I just love the sort of ocean, the view, the experience of being on the water, whether it to be to eat, or you're out on a boat just hanging out for the day.
But you take a plane ride over a boat ride.
Depends on what I'm doing.
Going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on where you end up.
So it's almost, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but my flying has really become a way to get from point A to point
Yeah,
B.
I was going to say that. A boat is an experience. A plane
Right.
is, where am I going to? Where can I get to easier and faster?
And and more conveniently and all that other stuff. And I love it. I love the experience of doing it, and I love doing it for other people. But the boating experience is, hey, this is my restaurant. That's R&R. So that's a different thing.
If I fly on your plane, do I have to have a luggage under 40 pounds like the Spirit flight I just took?
No, but if it's over 40 pounds, you're going to have to load it, because I'm not doing that.
You won't charge me though. 75.
No, I'm not going to charge you. I'm not going to charge you.
That's unbelievable. And JetBlue's talking about buying Spirit. Why? I can't imagine.
I don't get that. Or
it's crazy to me.
So I got to tell you something really funny though. As a professional pilot, I have loaded some baggage areas to the point where you can't believe the amount of stuff that you can get into those things. I've been in the cargo area, loading bags and stuff. It's crazy the amount of stuff some people can travel with.
Yeah. Speaking about customer service, the flight attendants or stewardess, what are they? Flight attendants and the oh yeah, we can't have too much weight. I'm like, no plane is getting down because the customer, each passenger has 10 extra pounds of let's just call it, I mean, just say what it is. But now everyone has that model where you're paying for extra. So Spirit is like they're looked upon as bad because of that, but also just a lesser brand. And I
Yep.
think a lot of their stuff is fine. If they would treat that people like everyone else treats, I think they could be better.
Yep.
But they don't care. They have, they're doing fine. They're looking at getting bought, which would be a miracle. I mean, crazy, right? It's crazy. There was a software company that got bought for money you couldn't even imagine, and I'm like, this stuff is not good. It's just
Yeah.
not good. I don't know why someone paid for it.
And you want to talk about a low threshold for client service. I mean, the airline industry has the worst client service.
Yep.
There's just but here's what I love. They have trained their clients to expect poor service.
Yeah.
So now nothing matters. I mean, if you don't deliver, it just doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
But options too, right? Supply, demand. People need to fly. What are the options?
That's it.
You're
That's
going
it.
to pay $100 extra to not have to deal with this. Most of the time, I would. And today, right now, with my own company and it's my own dollar,
Mm-hmm.
I have to look at that. So I'm looking forward to the day when I don't care about that stuff.
Yep.
It's not today though.
Yeah. No, we all look at that stuff.
Yeah.
And now if you absolutely have to be somewhere, you better plan to get there the day before, because you may or may not get there that day if you're relying on the airlines.
Yeah. It's been it's a toss up, a crapshoot, right?
Yep.
We're going to give you the same question we give every guest as we leave. The
Okay.
Wolff Den. You can spend a day, 24 hours with anyone in the world. They have to be alive, and you can't be related to them. Who would you pick, and what would you guys do?
Oh, that's a great question. Huh. Let me see. You know, I think sort of off the cuff, I would love to spend a day with Richard Branson.
Branson, yeah, we've had a couple, but Branson and Elon Musk, and
That's another good one.
Gates, and man, who's the other guy with
the sage of let's see. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah. So why Branson over some of those others? What is it about him? He's a fascinating guy.
Yeah, well, he appeals to me because, one, I think he's pretty cool. I think he's a guy who takes a lot of risk and has obviously figured out, how to mitigate and manage risk in investment. I think he's always been a customer service centric person. And I don't think he takes himself so seriously.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, I have no interest in meeting because, I don't know. Yeah, he's changed the world, and good on you, man.
He might surprise you with his personality, but you don't expect it. I look at Bill Belichick. People say he's like so much fun. I'm like, I don't get that from looking. I'm going to pass on that. Would you like to go to space? How much would you pay?
None. I don't think I would. But if I had the opportunity, I might.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Sure.
It's a weird thing that people are spending like ridiculous amount of money just to go up, and I don't know.
I can stay in the stratosphere and be okay.
Go on a roller coaster. There's plenty of good ones around here.
I don't like roller coasters.
I love roller coasters. Well, look, really appreciate your time here. It's great to get to know a little bit more about the company and the industry, which I think a lot of people don't know. They just don't. So check out stafflink.net. They're all over LinkedIn. You can find out more information about that, and let us know if you have any questions, or reach out if you have any needs. And looking forward to seeing you guys grow more. Love working with you and Heather, and she's the best, as I told you. It's you got good people around you, which is probably the most important thing when you're a smaller company, is to have the good people around you and that can do the job without you having a hound on them, and that you can trust them. So great to have you here. We have a couple more guests this week. Again, event tonight, Win Again Academy in the club room with Vance Johnson of the former Denver Broncos. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great night.
Thanks, Matt. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.